I'm here with Ian McKool.org, one of my favorite Orlando acts.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't think I would be able to land such a hot interviews for my first interview, but yeah, I've got a lot of questions for you. I Facebook stalked you long enough. I
thank
think
you.
I can really do you some justice. I hope I can get a decent story out of you.
Thank you. I hope so.
All right, so Ian, um, you are the man, the project, the band leader, the producer, engineer. You take on all the responsibility of your band.org. Um, what drove you to take such a DIY like approach to everything?
Being broke, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, just being broken. Like I've been in a bunch of numerous bands, like in high school and whatnot, and I just never really seemed to work that well. Um, with those people. I mean, I work well with other people. I've learned the hard way with that, but I just kind of like I got all set up here. I've got all the instruments, so I just figured why not.
why not? The typical DIY answer. Do you find joy? What's the goal with the DIY thing besides being broke? What is there anything that you get out of it?
I mean, nowadays, personally, I think like it's good to support people who are producing music and work in studios and whatnot. But I feel like a lot of people also are can tend to be a bit hesitant to start recording on their own. And I started basically just fiddling around with GarageBand and whatnot, and I still record on GarageBand. And I just kind of feel like that's enough to get the point across. I don't need any kind of fancy bells and whistles or anything like that. And I just kind of want to, it's just really nice.
So GarageBand, that is surprising. I was expecting you to be a Pro Tools man. Do you still like GarageBand? I mean, obviously you do, but you get such crisp recordings and production out of it. I was maybe even expecting Logic, like the next level of GarageBand. Have you looked into upgrading anything like that at all, or?
I've thought about it. I record on like a dingy mixer, Behringer mixer slash audio interface, what have you, and it's worked for me and it works well with GarageBand. And I've thought about using Logic or Ableton or Fruity Loops, whatever else is out there, but I've just used GarageBand so much that I kind of know how it works on the ins and outs of it. So I try to work with what I got, and also Pro Tools costs money, and
Pro Tools does cost money.
yeah, and I've tried to gain it for free, wink, and it didn't work. So
I got a copy of Logic Pro from a friend at work, so I've pretty much just learned on a garbage, like out of date, like I think it's like 4 versions old version of Logic. Yeah.
Yeah, I started out using it was like Logic Pro 9. It's like on Logic Pro X or something like that now, and I started on Logic Pro 9, and I was just overwhelmed. There were so many different options and things. I didn't even know what compression was at the time. I was just like just had the idea of just like a plug and play kind of thing, and that's what I do now. I just a plug and play. I usually have just everything set up. My house is like chaos for like a month or two when I'm doing an album, and it's just plug and plug it in, play it, whatever, and yeah.
So I did notice your gear here. You have the whole setup. The living room here is quite stacked with gear. It gets even worse than this when you're recording?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've got all my cables up there and whatnot, and they just kind of it's like a spider web. I look like some big spider king kind of thing with all the black cables and everything all strewn around the house, and they'll sometimes go into the bedroom, they'll sometimes go in the bathroom, outside, and so it's just it's a mess in here, and especially like because I also have a nasty habit of like writing while I record, and it's like I think I just have a skeleton of a song. I'm like, wait, maybe if I do a couple more guitar tracks, or wait, the oven kind of makes a really nice sound, And so it's just things thrown all over the place.
Have you ever put your guitar amp in the oven?
I don't think it would fit, but there might be a way to turn the oven into a guitar amp.
That sounds like an experiment to try out. Maybe if you get a little practice amp, you could stick it in there or something, get some weird acoustics.
Probably. I mean, I have used the oven before as an instrument.
For noise and whatnot?
Like more like percussive stuff. I have one of those, the little slide out things under the oven, and it's all filled with, pans and cookie sheets and whatever. And I just kind of pounded on that for a song.
Interesting. I noticed the reason why I asked if you use it for noise particularly, one of my favorite projects by you, probably my favorite, Jester, your first.
Really? Yeah, that was the first one.
A lot of atmosphere on that record. I noticed that you, maybe not indirectly, but Have a Nice Life, kind of stuff like that, post-punk, that crushing atmosphere, darkness, on some of the first tracks, like Prepare for Hell and
Time for Hell.
Time for Hell. And one of the last ones, Disquietude. But I love a lot of the tones that you get on that record, and just the context that it sets up for future .org projects. I think it's really polished for being such a first, record and attempt at recording music, especially learning now you use GarageBand. That's incredible. I want to know how you get some of those sounds. I mean, some of those soundscapes were very scary. Some of them were very dark. Some of them were very layered. Maybe an oven was in there.
Surprisingly for Jester, it was all a sort of MIDI controller that I used. And I just kind of used a lot of... I think that was the most, DI one. Because at that time, I didn't even have, a SM57 microphone, sort of like the industry standard guitar microphone or whatever. And I just had a spray-painted Radio Shack microphone that I had since high school. And that was all the vocals, and I recorded the drums on that one, which is why the drums kind of, have a bit of a just flat sound, I guess. I just kind of hung it up from the ceiling and put it over the drum set. And it got the job done. But yeah, Jester was it was very rough, and I wanted it to be kind of a nice jumping off point, because there's a bit of electronic stuff on it. There's some punk sounding stuff. There's some noise elements and ambient stuff, and I kind of wanted just a decent 20-30 minute platform.
And you definitely achieved that with Jester, released in 2016, correct?
2017.
2017. So .org started around, 2016?
2016. I did my first EP, John's Room, in 2016, and then kind of took a bit, because it was kind of songs that I had made from my previous project, Fuzz Lightyear, which was with my brother. It was
Clever name.
A two-piece thing with my brother. And so I had some leftover songs from that, and I didn't really quite know what I wanted to do. And so with Jester, I did that. So since then, I've been trying to do 2 albums a year.
I've noticed you are quite prolific, reminding me sort of Alex G, if you will, very eclectic, going kind of all over the place. I've noticed with some of your recent releases, you're going more for With Curiosity and Accidents and A Week in the Nude.
A Week in the Nude,
yes, of course. Clever name. I noticed you went more post-punk and prog with it. I was getting Rush, I was getting Police, a little bit of The Cure. What were some of the elements you were going for later? I noticed also you're gravitating more with the folk elements, acoustic guitar, if I am correct in my assumption, mandolin?
Mandolin and guzheng.
Interesting. Yeah, it's weird to see and very pleasant, and which is why I like .org so much out of all the local bands that I've seen so far, just to see your evolution. So what kind of drove you to this newer sound?
Basically, just I'm kind of I don't want to say settling in, but getting more comfortable with what I think sounds good, I guess. Because it started off with like Jester, and it had a lot of different elements. There was some folk elements, there was some sort of like post punk stuff, there was some normal punk, there was some ambient stuff on there, and it was a lot crammed into 20 something minutes or whatever. And then Terminal was kind of a more larger jumping off point, which had a lot of stuff. And I just feel that I also kind of feel like I suck with keeping a straight sound with an album. And then I like got into Ween a couple of years ago, and I was like, wait, they never had a straight sound. I was like, so I don't need one. And I have sort of thematic elements to each album that I do, and but as of like right now, I've kind of gotten into a little groove where I take less time to record it, and I just kind of shove as much as I can in at that time so I don't get distracted by other sounds. Yeah.
Distracted is a very interesting term that you decided to use there. I've noticed with writing, some of my own projects that the more time you take with a project, sometimes you do get distracted by listening to this new band you found on your recommended or something that your friend gave you. So what is your writing process like? Do you typically like to spend less time on a project? Do you do demos first and then record? Do you nail that perfect take like on the demo sessions, or what is the writing kind of style, and how has it progressed?
I don't do demos. I just I guess if you want to count like voice memos on my phone as a demo, I'll have like an acoustic song or something like that, or maybe like make a riff or whatever, and eventually they just kind of come into play, and then I go, okay, well, this kind of overall has this sort of thematic element to it, and a lot of it has things to do with like what's going on in my life at that point in time as well, as far as like a lyrical standpoint. And so when it comes to the whole writing process, it could be like, oh, I have the lyrics first, or I have a melody first, or I have a guitar riff first, or whatever, or I've been listening to the Police or something like that, and like, oh well, that'd be kind of fun to make that kind of sound and use flange and chorus and all that stuff. So it's just I think the main point with me is that I just like to have fun. I think music should be about having fun, and I guess not necessarily getting a point across, but just having fun with what you're doing.
I think that's wise words to live by, especially when creating music. The world does not seem very fun sometimes. So yeah, injecting that and worrying less about how you sound might be why some of your recordings just have so much passion and emotion behind them. Really relate to a lot of what you're putting out there, the vibes and stuff. These projects, like I said, have been getting better and stuff like that. Do you think world traveling has had any impact on your music? Do you incorporate other cultures, maybe subconsciously, maybe more directly? Do you attempt to incorporate places that you've been into your music? For instance, the Netherlands, I've seen you've been to Japan. Have you been anywhere else, and have these places played a part in how you write music?
Absolutely. I think that as an artist, it's important to travel. And I mean, a lot of the times it comes with the job. You kind of, if you're touring or anything like that, but even in your free time, I think it's important to, get out of a place of familiarity. And I make a point with each of my albums to have at least some kind of song that has some words or a title that's like in another language, and that's kind of also been like a trend with all of my albums, and I'm going to try to keep it up as well. A lot of it is either like German or French, or a lot of Japanese influence into what I have. But I mean, traveling is also supposed to be fun and getting out of your comfort zone, and so I think that helps you grow a lot as an artist, because it's like, what's the point in doing the same old song and dance over and over and making the same song about the same places and the same people, and then you kind of I feel like you can get a bit like upset and can cause like another breakthrough, but who knows? But I think traveling is just important to us because we're nomadic. Humans are we're nomadic primates. So.
Of course, yeah. Is there anywhere else that you've been that maybe might be kind of a surprise?
Canada.
Canada, yes. Our northern neighbors, gotta love Canada. Um, uh, I noticed that you are in the film. You were missing your subscription to Fangoria, a horror magazine dedicated to all things horror, film-related makeup, prosthetics.
Oh yeah, I did. You did good, buddy. Yeah, I had a subscription to Fangoria for like 2 years or something like that when I was a kid. I was obsessed with horror, and that was a big sort of theme for Speak of the Devil was horror related things, just nasty, dirty. But the album kind of came out a little clean sounding. There wasn't really much like noise aspect or any kind of like weird, freaky, ooh kind of sounds to it. But yeah, yeah, I love horror and film.
I noticed the giant Terminator poster you have over there. Is horror your favorite genre? I mean, based on the Fangoria account and whatever, do you typically draw more inspiration from stuff like that and makeup and find more interest in it as opposed to like dramas?
I feel like internally, in the back of my mind, horror has always been there from the beginning because that was sort of like being raised up on like Jaws and even like watching Passion of the Christ when I was like 8 years old. Um, I somewhat consider that a horror film because it's really grisly, and watching things like that kind of, I guess, going back to the whole travel thing brings you out of your comfort zone and can really raise some sort of fight or flight sort of responses, and but also like I'm keen to a really good drama.
Yeah.
I think drama is really nice too. Um, Humans are complicated creatures, so it's like horror is really good for the bare bones, and you can have a lot of really neat aspects to the horror genre, especially as of late with like Hereditary and The Lighthouse and a lot of those A24 films. Those are always like really nice to see and really refreshing because who wants to see Annabelle and Saw over and over and over. But I would say good horror drama, but I kind of like a little bit of everything. You know what I'm saying?
I noticed you mentioned A24. So when I saw you back in March, I believe it was one of the last weeks before COVID, we played a show together. I noticed your bassist was wearing an Uncut Gems t-shirt. Have you seen the film? Did you guys maybe watch the film together? What did you think?
I didn't see it till it got out on Netflix, but I really enjoyed Uncut Gems. I think Adam Sandler should do a lot more serious stuff because this Happy Madison films are a bit
His
trash.
shtick's a little overplayed at this point. Same song and dance as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I did think that Adam Sandler was pretty good in that film. It kept me on the edge of my seat, especially towards the end. So anxiety-inducing. Does anxiety really play a part in anything that you do music-wise or pursuit-wise, life-wise? Do you find yourself getting kind of caught up in day-to-day life, trying to shake things up, trying to avoid the same song and dance, especially when it comes to music and expressing yourself?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah?
Well, yeah.
Is it crippling?
It's not debilitating.
Okay. Pretty good syllable use there.
Well, it can be, but yeah. Anxiety is it plays a role a lot. There's a lot of skittishness to what I do at times, but I feel like I've kind of perfected the art of faking it till you make it. It's like inside, I feel like a car tire about to pop at all times, but you just kind of play it cool because can't get paid if you're anxious and jittery all the time. You know what I'm saying?
You cannot fake it till you make it. I was taught that in high school drama. My theater teacher was very much a subscriber to that form of thought. Fake it till you make it. If you're on stage, if you mess up, whatever the hell the case may be in life, if you mess up, you just gotta keep going. That kind of brings me to my next thing. You thought that it might not be in the cards for you to maybe have a career in music. Why is that? Well, like, is that something to do with the music industry? Maybe is it the scene of Florida, Orlando? What is it?
I mean, I think that, you know, especially I guess with the whole virus that shall not be named thing, it kind of put a damper on a lot of things, and also, I like to have a bit of a backup plan as well, and yeah, that also I guess kind of plays in the whole anxiety thing as well, where it's like, you know, you see all these other acts and other bands and whatnot that like started, and you know 2 years later they're making a full blown career out of it, and so I just kind of I guess put that out there because it's like I'm not placing my bets, but I'm I have like not only with music, but like there's a lot of different things that I also want to do, and so you know if the music thing works, then it works. If it doesn't, then you know there's other methods of enjoyment and productivity that I can utilize for a source of income. But I mean, I guess I'm an artist, so it's like I like you know building things and creating things and finding new ways to do things. So I think it's very healthy to have a bunch of different sort of hobbies and interests and different ways of, I guess, since art is a form of communication, other ways to communicate with the world around you, I suppose.
It's very clever. Speaking of creating and having, you know, various fingers in various pies, I've been seeing a lot of airplane work on your social media and whatnot. So when did that start, and like what got you into that? I'm super interested to see kind of how one becomes an airplane mechanic or.
It's kind of funny because life has a way of coming around full circle, and one of my sort of distant yet close cousins, bloodline wise, Roscoe Turner. He was an aviator and a racing pilot, and flew with an actual lion, and had a bunch of crazy stuff. And I was always like growing up around that sort of thing, even though like he died in the 70s or whatever. But you know, my dad was you know a big fan, and obviously family, and I grew up watching a bunch of like Studio Ghibli films, and Ghibli is an Italian airplane motor. I think it's a motor or an airplane, and so being around that and aviation, kind of I've always had an interest in it, and also with the whole fact of going places and traveling and whatnot. And it wasn't until around March of this year, my best friend, he which I played a lot of music with back in high school and whatnot. He recently became an aircraft mechanic, and so since being laid off or fired or whatever due to this virus, I've had a lot more free time to go and help out and learn as much as I can. And I mean, if you can build an engine, you know, you can build a lot of other things. And so I you know, I figured that would be a really good thing to learn, whether it helps me or not. And I've got nothing else going on for me, so I figured why not, and I've gotten into it. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a whole lot, and it's also helped improve my work ethic. So
It's kind of cool that you can draw so many things from, you know, something like that. You were saying before we started recording, I believe your grandfather was involved with filmmaking.
yeah, photography mainly. He he started photography back in the 50s, and built his own studio and did that as a career up until mid 2000s, and then he got he got Alzheimer's and had a stroke and had Alzheimer's, and battled that for a while, and so I mean, of course, he had to give up his career with that, but he had a really nice touch. He was very good at it, and growing up around that, it's like my whole family has been just like workers and artists, just craftsmen essentially, and so I guess growing up around that uh, really sort of steered me into this direction, and my album Terminal was pretty much influenced and dedicated to my grandfather, for just the whole dementia thing, because that stuff scares the shit out of me.
It's a very scary thing because it starts to warp your reality. You can't quite know what's going on. You don't know what to believe anymore. So did you incorporate a lot of those themes into Terminal?
Yes. Terminal was a concept album about a character, male or female, you or I, whoever, gets diagnosed with something wrong with the brain, and just the whole deterioration and being on different kinds of medicine, and dealing with other people, and it's a really tough time. And I guess that album was just sort of like my way of connecting and grieving, because when he passed, I didn't really have too much time or to grieve or anything like that. And that album just kind of helped me to solidify that, and in a way get closer. And I remember, he would come up with these like wild fantasies later on, in dementia and whatnot, and so that kind of influenced the later half of the album, where the character thinks he's Captain Hook, he thinks he's an alien, he thinks he's this, that, and the other, on a journey to find the Arkenstone, which is the Hobbit kind of thing. And so I kind of utilized that to really kind of run rampant with not only things that I liked, but I guess how that pans out or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I could definitely tell you were going kind of with that, with what, the 12-ish minute track, second to last track on that record, all over the place, from highs and lows, and starting out very ambient and soft spoken to like almost not black metal-ish, but very hard, crushing percussion of like this, towards the end, and then right back to the resolution, and then into your quiet outro to the album. I thought it was really a cohesive album, and definitely a really good end, despite having that weird element of kind of going off on tangents like we're doing here, and losing yourself.
Thank you.
Of course. But do you have any plans for .org in the future? I know you're writing more stuff, obviously you always are, but with COVID and everything, pardon me, the virus that should not be named yet. So what are your future plans with .org? Just to kind of keep expressing yourself and writing new music, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be making music till the day I die, whether people like it or not. I feel like I'm always going to like it. It's always going to reflect whatever's going on in my life at that point in time. And I can't stop doing it. If I stop doing it, I get real bummed out. And I kind of lose track and go into a weird identity crisis. And of course, Sean and Patrick, we're buds, and we're always going to be, I mean, hopefully we'll be the first to jump on as soon as shows start back and whatnot. And so I feel like the future is going to be fun. There's still a lot of hope. And I think that the world needs a bit of hope, and to realize it's not all bad.
Well, that's definitely a great note to end on. I think we should all remain positive, and keep channeling that into .org on future projects. It can only get better from here. Ian McKool, .org. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.